Thank you very much, Peter, for the invitation. So as Peter mentioned, I've been running around Amsterdam for the last 3 days. This is my first time in Amsterdam, obviously. I'm from Brussels, so it's not that far. I've been coming here for maybe a dozen times already, but it's always been for a conference. So this is the very first time I've actually been to local startups' offices and actually talking to them, sitting down, doing video interviews, and it's been eye-opening, quite frankly. So very happy to be here. I'm very happy that you could come instead of sitting outside on a terrace on such a beautiful day. So that means something. Thank you. These are my contact details. I'll repeat them at the end. We're going to talk about how to maximize your chances of getting press coverage as a startup. And note that it doesn't say how to get press coverage as a startup, because there's no magic bullet. There's no magic sauce or magic formula that I can tell you. Hello? So there's nothing that I can tell you that will guarantee press coverage or publicity. But I can show you, or I can tell you about a few tricks and a few things that you never should do. So I'll start with the ones that you should do, and at the end I'll briefly talk about 11 mistakes that I see very commonly made by entrepreneurs across Europe. So the many years of experiences, as Peter mentioned, I've been a senior editor at TechCrunch for a few years, and then I was the European editor at the Next Web, which I'm sure you all know very well. And I've been the founding editor of Tech.eu for the last year and a half now, basically exploring the European startup scene, traveling across Europe to talk to entrepreneurs and ask them what excites them. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty fucking amazing job. But it also means that I don't really know anything about growth hacking, and I don't know anything about PR either. But I do know startups. I've been writing about startups for about 7 years now, but I've also been an investor advisor in some of Belgian startups. I've done a startup conference for a few years in Brussels as well. I was involved in starting some companies as a partner as well. So I know what makes startups tick. I know what entrepreneurs want from press, because I've been on the other side of the table as a journalist. So I'm going to share some of my experience sitting on the other side of the table. Obviously, I'm not a PR professional, but I'll briefly share about why PR professionals can be very important to you. So a little bit on what news journalists actually do, which is read a lot, write a little. And this is particularly when I was at TechCrunch and the Next Web, not so much anymore, but when I was at TechCrunch and the Next Web, they were very competitive about news, breaking news first, which means you have to read everything, you have to get all the pitches that are incoming, you actually have to read, you have to analyze, you have to filter through them, you have to get better at that sourcing, you have to get better at very quickly understanding what a startup does. So constantly looking for needles in a very big haystack, obviously. This is a very important, don't have to read the whole thing, but we spend more time choosing what to write about. I often get the question like, how do you choose what to write about when there's like 100 startups constantly getting your attention every single day? And the honest answer is that we spend more time figuring out like what should we write about than actually searching for stuff. We read a lot of stuff, but once it's out there, we typically don't write about it, which is the nature of the news business. It's very competitive. So if you're not first, then you're second, and nobody wants to be second. So this is my inbox. It's not just email. It's a lot of, it's face-to-face meetings, it's Skype, it's DMs, it's coming from everywhere. So not one inbox, but like 1,000 inboxes. So that means that there's a pyramid upside down. It's like a funnel of pitches constantly from different sides. Right? So if you're on top of the pyramid, then it gets very hard to get down to the bottom. Which is the same for an early stage investor. They will show you the same slide. But there are a couple of tricks that can make you come in here or here or here, instead of just another email from someone I don't know. So how to do that? Rule number 1, do something that matters. Which seems like a very obvious thing, but it's not really for most startups. If you do something amazing, then you will get press coverage, even if you don't want it to. So that means if you're Elon Musk, then I guarantee you that he's never cold pitched a journalist, but he still gets written about because he built some amazing stuff. So rule number 1 is do something amazing that makes journalists want to write about you, even if you don't go to them. Ground rule. Everything begins and ends with do something that matters. Rule number 2 is do your homework. That means read the publications that you plan to reach out to. Follow the journalists that you think can cover your startup, your market, your industry well. Read them. Try and understand what makes them tick, what makes them passionate. Also by following them on Twitter, Facebook, try to get a sense of what the publications they write for stand for, but also what the journalists in question care about. Rule number 3, build relationships first. That means you maximize your chances of getting coverage by us already having your name in our heads, meaning that you were a frequent commenter on our articles, or you engaged with us on Twitter in a nice, professional, polite way. That means you email us about articles that we've written and add something to it. Give us feedback. Nice article, but you've left out this and this, or you should go talk to that one. Even if it's not your industry, it's just friends of yours. If we can remember your name from previous engagements that we've had, conferences, but also online, then it gets easier for you to get into the bottom of the pyramid instead of the top. Craft a great story. That means you have to package what you do very well. There are loads of resources online that you can go to that can help you tell a better story. So try to make use of all that free stuff out there that can help you craft a great story. If you don't manage to do that, then get help from a professional. It can be a copywriter, it can be a content marketing, it can be a PR pro, but get help because it really, really, really matters. It makes a ton of difference. It makes a ton of difference when you go pitch to investors. It makes a ton of difference when you go pitch to journalists, but it also makes a lot of difference when you go out and talk to customers and partners. If you boil it down to a very good story about what you stand for, then you maximize your chances of basically everything in business. And then learn how to deliver it, which is very hard. And very, very hard to boil down to like a few tips. Rule number 6 is all of that stuff that I just talked about is what you do before you send an email to a journalist. Right? So try and get that through your minds that you have to do something amazing first. You have to build a relationship first. And you have to work on your packaging, your messaging, the way that you're going to communicate, your positioning, the way that you see yourself against competitors or other players in your industry. All of that stuff you need to do before you reach out to journalists. It's not always easy. So we got a lot of mediocre pitches. We got some really bad pitches which make us laugh a lot, and we share them on Twitter, and we make fun of the entrepreneurs. But very few, actually. And we get a few great pitches. Perfect. Very few. We got a lot of mediocre ones. Hundreds every day. So it means it gets very, very hard for us to determine what we should write about just based on emails. Or whatever way you prefer to pitch. Important lesson. The fact that you exist doesn't mean anything. We don't care. And don't take it personally. I think I was the first to write a story about Kickstarter on TechCrunch. I think I was first to write a story about WhatsApp back in the day. I didn't know that they were going to matter. So you can read the articles now, they're bullshit, essentially. Because I didn't know. I can tell you about 1,000 startups that I don't even remember and that you won't remember that are also written up. Right? So for us, it doesn't really matter. The fact that you exist isn't news. The fact that you signed a big partnership may matter to you, but it doesn't matter to us. The fact that you won this award at some conference in some country matters to you, to your mom, to your dog, but not to us. Right? What you do, the products that you build, the market that you try to reach out to, the customers that you're trying to land are much, much more important than any of that stuff. Existing is not news. So do something that matters, that has a news angle, that makes us care about you. So how do you do that? Give us an angle. Like we do this and this much better than these big incumbent companies. And we took away some of their customers by doing this and this and this. Could be innovation on the product side, could be innovation in business model, could be innovation in the way that you communicate. Right? Give us an angle. If you get introduced by someone we know, I know that's the way it works. You get the bottom of the pyramid instead of the top. It's just the way it works. If you get introduced by a founder that we've written about or an investor that we frequently write about their portfolio companies, then obviously you get a head start. It's just the way it works. If you hire someone phenomenal, that matters. If you get investors or advisors that everybody knows, then that matters. So it's just the way that the game works. If you get 100 startup pitches and you're the one that got investment from Peter Thiel or whatever, then you get a step ahead. Even if I don't know you, even if we don't have a relationship from before, that gets you the bottom. 11 commonly made mistakes. So these are stuff that I encounter very, very frequently, especially when I was still doing a lot of breaking news coverage. Only reaching out when you feel you have something to share. Remember when I said you have to build a relationship first? I often get contacted and the pitch can be perfect, but if I've never heard of you before, you haven't done the groundwork, you haven't done your homework in trying to understand what I'd like to write about, or the publication that I write for, or the audience that I cater to, because essentially we're selling content to an audience and advertisers. For us, it doesn't really matter what comes in. We don't necessarily care about which startup we write about. As long as it touches something, we get interest by you giving us an angle. So don't come to us only when you need us. Just as I said before, try to engage with us on Twitter or Facebook or in the comments of the articles before. Send us an email saying that you hated the article for a good reason, or that you liked the article for a good reason. So not understanding what we do, this is something I've already talked about. If you don't understand what makes us tick, then you're going to have a harder time trying to get us to write about you. So at a given publication, say TechCrunch, there are maybe 20 writers right now. Some of them will be specialized more in mobile apps. Some of them will write more about enterprise software. So if you're in that category, then reach out to the right journalist. And you can easily do that just by following the blog, the publication, doing some basic research. It takes you an hour. That's it. Not convincing us why we want to spend time. Time is the most valuable commodity of news journalists, obviously. We get a lot of pitches, we read a lot, we write a little. So the time that we spend writing has to be worth it. Right? So try and avoid these typical buzzwords: next generation, award-winning, revolutionary, innovative. It's all horseshit. And you know it, and I do. I have a Chrome extension, a plugin that was specifically built by a friend of mine that filters out all these buzzwords automatically from everything I read on the net. Right? Every press release, every email I get in Gmail filters out all these words. So it doesn't even matter if you use them. I don't even see them. It's a great Chrome extension. It's still live, so you can download it yourself if you want. Another commonly made mistake is not actually telling us why the news matters. So you raise funding, fine. Tell us how much and who from. You wouldn't believe how many pitches I get. We raised a seed round, and I ask how much. Can't tell you. Who from? Can't tell you. Sorry, that does, good on you for raising funding, but if you don't tell us what you raised it for, who you raised it from, how much it is, then it gets much harder. So we like numbers, we like names, we like concrete information that we can use to do our own research. So you have a great deal, you landed a great customer, you have a great partnership, actually telling us the details of these partnerships. Why does this matter? For you as a company, but also in the industry, how does that relate to everyone else doing partnerships and customers? Right? Give us an angle. Try and put yourself in our shoes and try to make it relevant. Not just for us, but for the audience that we cater to. So wasting our time is very unprofessional. The way that you waste our time is by not including information about the app that you're building. If you want us to review an app and you don't even link to the beta product, or you don't include screenshots, or you don't or you talk about your team, but you don't link to the BIOS, you have to go look it up. It's all time that we waste that you could have avoided just by giving us some basic information in an email. Doesn't necessarily mean that your email has to be super long, just has to have the right information. I often get pitched, or I used to get pitched a lot for app reviews, and then I'd go back and I have to say, like, where can I download it? What's it? Is it on iOS or Android? And they wouldn't even tell me, and then it takes 24 hours until you get a response, and by then, I don't know, Apple bought Twitter or whatever, and then we forget about you. We don't care. So if you waste our time, then you minimize your chance of getting press coverage. Not telling us the truth is also a very commonly made mistake. That doesn't necessarily mean that you lie to us, but it means you misrepresent the market size, your competitors. We don't have any competitors. It's bullshit. So never do that. Never lie. Never intentionally omit information. Never say that you don't have any competitors. Don't lie about your competitors. Don't lie about your investors, etc. We're gonna find out anyway. That's bad news for you. Another mistake, just mentioned, misrepresenting, exaggerating, downplaying your rivals. Never talk bad about your competitors. It only reflects very poorly on you. This is life advice. It's not just business advice. Just don't talk bad about anyone else. I often get asked, like, should we get a PR person to help us out, either internal or external? I always say, as a founder, try to do your own PR for as long as you possibly can. There's nobody that understands your business the way you do. There's nobody that shares the vision the way you do. There's nobody that knows in your head. You've already probably planned the next 3 to 5 years in your head the way you want your business to play out. You cannot get a PR, an external person, or just another person within the company. It's very, very hard to try to get them to deliver the same message at the right time in the right way. So try and do it for as long as you possibly can. If you're at a point that your business is so big or so important or so much in the news that you can't manage it anymore, hire a PR professional and hire the best you can. Pay them very well because they make a lot of difference. I told you about all the bad pitches and the mediocre ones. They're usually from very mediocre PR people. 90% of the industry is just mediocre. A PR professional does way, way more than just writing a press release and sending it to journalists. Way, way more. They help you establish who you stand for, who your competitive landscape is, how you position yourself towards your rivals, how you fit into the ecosystem, how you, which words you should choose when you start writing first emails to customers, journalists. They can help you out a lot with that kind of stuff, right? Something we don't like as news journalists when you give a story to someone else. We all like exclusives, but we only like them when we get them. So try and be very careful when you give exclusives, and then you start reaching out to other publications. Like, can you also write about this? Techers already covered it, so please, can you write about us too? That doesn't necessarily work very well. It reflects very poorly on you, because that means you don't understand the industry and you don't understand news journalism and the competitiveness that comes with it. So seeing us as a tool, it sounds kind of weird, but a lot of startup founders come to journalists looking for publicity to reach a goal. You know, if only we get coverage, we might get more users, or we can finally land that customer, or we can get the investors to finally sign that term sheet, right? So seeing us as a tool to get to somewhere will end very badly for you, because if that's your only strategy of getting to that point, then it's not going to work. So these are the sort of relationships that you build up over years and years, right? So you're not going to get what you want just by talking to press. Another commonly made mistake is not asking questions when I stop talking and ask if there are any questions. That's one for later. Back to the ground rule. Whatever you do, build something great and press coverage will come. No matter what. Even if you don't want it. Any questions? There you go. Tough question. So your goal is talking to journalists 2-3 years before you want an exit? Well, first of all, as a founder, I don't. So the question is, if you, when do you start contacting journalists with the goal of, if you have an exit in mind, 2-3 years? So first of all, as a startup founder, I don't think you should be thinking about an exit when you start a company. When do you start reaching out to journalists? When you have something that you can show. Lots of people try to get teaser interest, like we're almost ready with our beta. Do you want to test it in a few weeks? And then obviously you forget. Like you have to have something to show for when you come to us the first time, right? Getting press coverage doesn't necessarily make your chance of getting acquired or exit any bigger. It might, but not necessarily. So there's right now there are like 1,000 publications writing about startups, different languages, local startup blogs. So that you can get 100 articles written about you, won't necessarily maximize your chance of getting an exit. It might, but you never know. So I would just focus on getting coverage for the product that you've built and the changes that you do to an industry or market or the challenge that you bring to a big company, for example, rather than with an exit in mind. I don't know if that answers your question, but anyone else? Go.
Which pitch did you receive that surprised you?
So which pitch did I receive that surprised me the most? I don't know, very hard to say, but I mean, there's just small stuff in my Twitter bio. If you go to my Twitter account, it says, I love my family traveling and Belgian beer. So sometimes I'll get an email say, hey, I've been to Belgium once. Which one do you prefer? My favorite was Triple Carmelite, whatever. It's like one line gets my attention. Say, this guy has done his research. At least he's looked at my profile. He's read it, right? So that's a little trick that gets my attention because we usually don't even get to the second paragraph of an email. If we get 100, then we have to skip. We have to filter through. So great pitches make it personal, make it relevant, include all the information that we need, and give us some insight into why we should. Like in the first paragraph, we should already know why we want to write about you. Not in the third or fourth, but just try to get our attention first and then say this is matter. We're challenging Amazon when it comes to selling books online. Whatever. This is a bad example, but you get the point. Sort of the angle that you're trying to convey, put it in the beginning, but not necessarily one example of a great pitch. Sorry. I should have included some examples, but I will next time. It's a good tip. Lots of bad ones too. Bad pitches, getting name wrong, getting the name of the publication wrong. I get pitches for cosmetics, makeup stuff. I always wonder, like, where does it come from? But probably they have a list of journalists. They don't even know if they write about technology or cosmetics or cars or whatever. They just have a list of journalists that they send an email to. Very strange. Strange industry, PR. Yep.
What do you think of combining, like, for example, for the fact now like an event, like financial weird event to get attention?
Right. So the question is, what about combining a product launch or a news announcement with an event? Good question. Problem with getting journalists to come to your event or cover your event or even take notice of your event is very small. Because we get invited to a lot of stuff already, like conferences, meetups, all these stuff. But if it matters more for, I think, bringing customers, partners, and local attention that you can use for recruitment or getting partners on board or that sort of stuff, I think has a better chance of achieving that. Yeah. Doesn't necessarily work that way, but I think a lot of people underestimate smaller publications and what they can do for you. Like if I'm a mobile app developer, sometimes it makes more sense to get my review of my app on a very small app site, but that specializes in mobile apps for kids or whatever, than getting an article on TechCrunch, because a lot of people read TechCrunch or the Next Web, but don't necessarily have anything to do with your business. Or you get like 70, 80 articles per 24 hours on TechCrunch on average. So it's very overwhelming. So people take notice when they go to a review site for a mobile app. They'll notice because that's what they're there for. TechCrunch kind of has everyone, right? So I hope that answers your question. Yes. Is it common to pay journalists? No. In 7 years, maybe once or twice someone's tried, which is very low compared to thousands of pitches every day. Well, every week or whatever. No, it doesn't happen. Might be a good trick to get attention though, but not the right kind of attention. Yeah. It's a strange question. Do you have any plans for? I take checks. Yeah. Go.
So do you ever randomly run into a story that you think you want to cover instead of picking something from your inbox?
Do I randomly run into stuff to cover? Yes. especially at conferences. Like I'll roam around the halls, try and hide the fact that I'm a journalist, or try and hide my badge, and just watch people explain what they do to other people, and just kind of listen in. And then sometimes I'll come across interesting stuff. For example, I was on Twitter. I announced like a few times in the weeks leading up to this week that I was coming to Amsterdam, and you get some responses from local entrepreneurs. Hey, can we meet up for coffee, whatever? So that I think is a good approach to get that relationship built in the first place. Someone saw me check into Rockstar this morning and came up to me and said, "Are you Robin?" I just saw you check in. Nice. It's a 1 minute, 2 minute conversation, but increases our chances next time he contacts me. You remember me? We met at Rockstar. We were having coffee. That helps. I mean, sometimes I come across stuff just randomly, and then we'll write about it if it matters. Or if it, sometimes you have slow moments, and then, oh yeah, I remember this guy I talked to. I can look it up and kind of review. Yeah, it does happen. Yep, I lifted, yeah. Hi.
You have experience on three of the biggest blogs, tech blogs. Do you have some advice on how to approach these three different blogs?
No. Because remember what I just talked about? Like there are different journalists working for all these publications. They don't necessarily like to get approached in the same way, just for starters. So you can ask the journalist that you want coverage from, like how do you like to get pitched? Do you prefer email? Do you like phone calls? Do you prefer Skype? What's your Skype address, etc.? Do you like Twitter DM? Just ask them, and then they'll tell you. But everyone likes to get approached differently. It's a personal thing, right? So a publication doesn't get approached. A journalist within the publication gets approached, right?
By approaching, I don't mean necessarily how to get in touch, but more like what kind of pitches, what kind of stories.
It depends. I mean, obviously, TechCrunch does a lot of product launches, funding, M&A. So if you have that kind of story, then go to them, right? If you have an app review, then it gets a little harder. But then you can go to all the app review sites who don't necessarily cover funding or M&A. So depends on what you want to communicate. But do your homework. Like, which journalist specializes in my field or seems to have a sense of what goes on in my industry, in my market. Cheers.
Before you answer this question, I was wondering what would you prefer as the way to be contacted? Would it be email or WhatsApp or?
All right.
I was just wondering that before she asked.
I like email. I don't mind email. A lot of journalists do, but I don't. I hate phone calls. Some journalists only want to talk to people on the phone, and they hate email. They won't check it for a week sometimes. Depends, but I don't. I like email because it's manageable. I don't like phone calls because it interrupts everything else I'm doing. Like I like to do stuff at the same time. But not everyone likes to do that or wants to do that. So depends. Email. Twitter is also a very good channel.
At the beginning, you said you're traveling through Europe.
Yep.
How does like Amsterdam compare to like Berlin or Paris or Brussels or whatever?
That's a fair question. Because it's interesting because most of the people I talk to at the end of the interview or meeting, whatever, I ask, like, what do you think of the Amsterdam startup scene yourself, being a member of it? And they would give me, like, these are the positives, and they would tell me these are the things that we think are missing or not going very well. And pretty much everything I've heard about Amsterdam might just as well be Barcelona or Tallinn, Estonia, or whatever. So it's a lot of the problems that you have in different European countries come back a lot in Amsterdam. But you have all the ingredients that you need for a mature ecosystem. You have good technical universities, you have a good international appeal, so a lot of foreign talent likes to come to Amsterdam to live and work here. So you have that going for you. You have local blogs. Like the Next Web's a pretty big deal in tech startup land, and they're here. So you have big conferences going on. You have a very international airport very nearby. These are all stuff that is the big pluses, right? Some minuses are obviously the local VCs are very, very small in number, and they don't necessarily invest very actively, let alone actively in growth companies. So once you get to Series B, Series C, you already have to start looking outside Netherlands, maybe even Europe to get investment. So that's a problem, but it's not an Amsterdam problem or a Netherlands problem, it's a European problem, right? So, but yeah, but compared to Berlin and London, still very long way to go. But very, in the maturation phase. If you look at all the co-working spaces I visited, incubators, accelerators, very, very mature already. So good prospects for the next 4 or 5 years.
It's kind of a question to see, like, what you think about this, but something I found that works. I mentioned before, like, I do some PR for like cycling brands or like sports brands trying to get products featured in different like fitness magazines and stuff. And sometimes I'll get a meeting with a journalist, maybe we have a secondary connection, some of the hacks I mentioned before, but it's not really something they would write about. And asking them, like, well, what kind of stuff do you want to write about? Maybe not what they think they should be for their job or whatever they're interested in.
Mhm.
And I always keep that in mind. And sometimes I'll send them stuff that would be interesting for them, make an introduction to them.
There you go. Building relationships.
Exactly. And then they sometimes will introduce me to other journalists they
Yeah.
know. So it's
There's nothing wrong with becoming a good source for journalists. You know, you're in Amsterdam, I'm not. So if you see interesting stuff going on, if you're the one to always tell me what's interesting, and then suddenly you're the one coming to me with a story about your startup, then obviously I'm already going to know you. I'm going to appreciate what you did for me, so that maximizes your chance of getting covered. Obviously, it's just a human nature. So interact with us before you need us, essentially. And very good point. Like, if you meet journalists, like, just ask them, like, what do you like to write about? Like, what interests you? What should I come to you with? Do you do funding, M&A, transaction-wise, or are you more like an in-depth product review guy? Just ask him. Yep.
Do you follow an editorial calendar? Like, do you have
No.
a topic?
No. Editorial calendars are a legacy of print, which
Like, if you have some feature stories and like, okay, now I'm going to cover, I don't know, startups in
No.
Amsterdam, for example. Do you have these things set, or is it sort of?
no, I don't. But I do have geographies in mind. Like, I wanted to come to Amsterdam. I wanted to go to Estonia. I wanted to go to Moscow this year. But that doesn't make it
Certain topics, or is it just whatever inspires
No.
you?
whatever. So I'm interested in what makes a startup ecosystem. That means I like to talk to startups, but also investors, shareholders, policymakers. So I met with the wethouder, I think it's called here, the deputy mayor. We've been to the folks from Startup Delta. So I don't like to only talk to startups. I like to get a sense of what goes on in the entire ecosystem by talking to different stakeholders in the industry. But that's just a personal thing. Like, it's, you know, different journalists have different needs and wants. So, yeah.
Thanks for the talk, first of all. It's really insightful. My co-founder, he has a friend who works at a company that has this huge database with all these journalists in it.
Is it you? Is it you?
No, it's not.
My co-founder has a friend that has a cousin.
But his view is, okay, we just have to basically spam every week or every month with email with something about the company. After listening to this talk, that's not really a nice way of building the relationship.
It's an amazing strategy to not get covered. I mean, if you tell me every little thing that happens at your company, obviously I'm going to zone out and just space out all the information I get for you. So even if you have something interesting, I'll be like, okay, another email from that guy. Just,
So this is recorded, right?
yeah, show it to him, yeah. So, especially,
Strict action goals
yeah.
before
I mean, honestly,
convince them to stop. Give me another month to build a relationship. I need some.
so yeah. What was your last slide, John? What? Keep trying. Keep trying. And what was the first one? Always be learning. So try and combine those two. Be trying, but learn when to try. Yeah, so. Thank you. Cheers. Another one? Do we have time? Keep going. I like it. Go. You go first. What was the question?
As I said, so the question is, you're interested in this ecosystem,
Yeah.
and then, but how do you use it for tech.eu?
It's a good question. So essentially, if you look at Europe, what goes on right now is that you have a lot of momentum building in different regions. So in Amsterdam, it might be all of these co-working spaces, accelerators finally starting to make sense and get connected and talk to each other, share knowledge. And there, on the flip side, there's lots of interest from policymakers, big corporations to start to engage with these startups. But there's not really anyone sitting in the middle right now connecting those dots through data, through insights, through analysis, and that's where we fit in. So the better we understand the startup ecosystem, the better we can identify and connect the right startups to the right corporations etc. So, and we're going to build a data business, so we're going to sell reports. So the better the information that we have from local ecosystems, and the better the connections that we have. Like if we want to check some data, if we're going to want to get some insights from local ecosystem, it helps if you know which people to turn to. And you can only do that by building relationships, actually coming here and building, talking to all these people. So that's how it fits into our business model. It's not for advertising or, we might at some point do events. So if we would do an event as a European company, we don't necessarily have a home base. So the jury is still out on where we want to organize the events. So if we go to Amsterdam, we like what we see, and we see all these venues, and we know that there's a draagvlak, I don't know how you say that. There's a critical mass of corporations and startups and activity, then we might come to Amsterdam for the event. So, who knows? Yep.
So necessarily you may have some local smaller media that may cover your activities, and also the bigger ones. Does that would make sense to save bigger events and news items for the bigger
Yeah.
say websites and to keep the coverage consistent? Like doesn't the consistency matter at all?
It's a tricky question. If you ignore your local startup blogs for the big news, that means they will very quickly that pisses people off, right? I mean, it would piss me off if I would have a local startup blog and I would know you for years, and then you finally have some big news and you take it to a big one, but not to me, then that would piss me off as a journalist. Now, you have to put your own interests ahead of the journalists. So if it makes more sense for you to go to TechCrunch or whatever with a good story, then by all means do it. If that means giving the exclusive to a big media company rather than a local startup blog, if they accept it and it actually gets covered, then good for you. Like I wouldn't. But more importantly, I think, is choosing the right journalists to turn to rather than the right publication. So rather than going this typical embargoes where you would send to 5, 10, maybe 15 publications, journalists that you might already know, say we have this story but it's embargoed until next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Just go to 2 of them that we really understand what you do and we really cover it well and go in depth, and go with those 2 rather than 10 or 15 at the same time. Would be my advice. I don't know if that's the right, in my humble opinion. Yep.
Coming back to that ecosystem, so do you think ecosystems just develop or they're made? Because a lot of, at least I see in Europe, kind of making an ecosystem then kind of letting it happen organically.
Every ecosystem is made. Silicon Valley was built 50, 60 years ago by government subsidies going to very large corporations building solutions for defense industry. That's where Silicon Valley was made. This is the whole Fairchild Semiconductor, the actual silicon companies came out of an industry that was very government subsidied. So it was made. If you lay the groundworks, then good things can happen. But you have to have some ingredients. Like you have to have good universities, business schools, international connections in terms of airports, trains. If you don't have that as a city, then it's very hard to make an ecosystem. If you have those ingredients, then you can make. But you have to make stuff happen. You have to actually get governments involved. You have to get investors actively investing. You have to start forming groups and associations to actually. You have to do meetups to bring people together, share knowledge. So ecosystem doesn't just grow out of a tree. No, they get made, definitely. My experience, at least. Yep. Yeah, I think I talked about that briefly, but PR agencies can help you out a lot if they're very good, but only go to them when you really need them. A lot of founders, especially the typical technical engineers, guys that are building great products, think of PR as something that we have to do as a company, but we don't want to do. We don't know what PR is, so we'll go to a PR agency and they'll do it for us. Doesn't necessarily work well that way. So you have to do it yourself for as long as you can. You have to train yourself to become good at PR because it's so much more important to your business than most people realize. Like it matters. Like a good PR agency or good PR professional will also teach you how to communicate what you do very clearly, which is something very basic, which won't necessarily lead to PR coverage or press coverage, but might lead to better conversation with customers, better conversation with potential investors. If you can clearly communicate what you do, then it gets easier to get stuff done. or get publicity or get investment or get customers on board. So a PR agency, I think, can help you if you're very bad at actually packaging or packaging in a message what you do, which for a lot of people is very hard. But do you need a PR agency for that? I don't know. These are skills that you can learn yourself. You can train yourself. You can find resources online, tons of books, tons of videos that you can watch for free. So just use the knowledge that's already available. But that's not the issue. The issue is more awareness. The fact making founders realize that they need those skills is the hard part. Getting the skills is not that hard.
Is there any book you would recommend?
No, but you should really. There are a couple of very good PR blogs that have like lists of resources of and Startup Stash, by the way, Amsterdam initiative is also very good at it. Like, it has different categories: branding, marketing, and PR is one of them. So they'll give you like a rundown. Sorry? I don't read books on PR, I'm sorry. But I know there are good ones out there.
Yeah, so John said that the best time to contact clients was Sunday evening when they're stressing out about work.
Yeah.
What's the best time, stupid question, but maybe you got one. What's the best time to send an email to somebody from the press? It's probably different for everybody, but it's probably not around big events, but is there like a time where you have less, maybe 30 instead of 100 or
Yeah.
something like that?
I think I was listening to the Sunday evening, I was thinking, right. I think someone once asked, like Michael Arrington in the beginning days, like when's the best time to contact you? He said the same thing. Sunday evening is because that's when it's quiet, but it's also when you're typically online to kind of prepare for the week. I have 2 young kids, so all my free time is no longer free time, so there is no ideal time anymore. But I mean, you can also ask a journalist, like when in advance, like if I ever have any news, when should I get in touch? Like,
Yeah, what's the best time to ask him?
Sunday evening, yeah. It's hard. I mean, and I get that question a lot actually, and I get questions like, what's the best day in the week to send an email? I don't know. I don't know. Whenever there's no other news coming in the next 5 minutes, which I can't predict, right? So, as I said, like it's a stupid example, but sometimes you get contacted by an interesting startup, start reading, oh, this looks like something, and then Apple buys Twitter or whatever, or the European Commission sues Google, which happened today. Sorry, I'm not gonna. So that might have been ideal timing 5 minutes before, but not necessarily then. But I mean, in general, you know when, if you start following journalists, then you also know where they live, so you can kind of make sense of their time zone as well. I get a lot of emails during the night, which are obviously is a very bad time because I'll be asleep most of the time. So if they don't do the homework to kind of figure out where I am, then so I would say during daylight. Anyone else? Yeah.
I got one more. So I know you said that you
Go.
write the article for the
No.
in-depth journal, like you write. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I know TechCrunch and even sometimes the Verge with these so-called in-depth
Yeah.
publications. You've got these guys, like I don't know if they're junior editors or whatever, they're posting 5, 6, 7 articles a day.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that for less scrupulous people than you, maybe actually sort of writing it with the quotes and
Yeah.
stuff can make their lives easier because they have no time.
Yeah.
So it could increase your chances of
It's a very fair question. There was a time I used to write up to 9, 10 articles per day on TechCrunch, which obviously comes with some copy pasting. And everyone at TechCrunch does it, the next web as well. If you're in the news, then a lot of copy pasting going. The first thing we do is pull out all the quotes. Have you ever seen any quotes in an article except if it's a real interview? That's the stuff that gets kicked out of press releases all the time. Like I wouldn't advise anyone to put anything in quotes in press releases anymore. Just give us the information. If we have any questions, we'll talk to you, right? So pre-made quotes are always boring, always. Doesn't have any new information, so you can just put that in the rest of the press release. But to answer your question, yes, you will find that you have an easier time getting coverage if you pre-write articles or kind of make it easier for journalists. But you have to ask yourself, is that the kind of coverage you want? So yes, but don't write the article for us because any real serious journalist that takes his job seriously is not going to appreciate that. That starts off with a bad vibe, because that's the only thing we know how to do. Essentially, is right. We don't know anything about the stuff that you're building necessarily. So you just communicate what you're doing as clear as you can, and we'll write the article. That's what we do. Yep. We're done?
Yeah.
Okay. That was fun. Thanks.